Hello guys, alright, so we are going to be doing some graphing, which is way easier than what we did last week. I don't know how many of you guys got started on this already, but I apologize for the delay, but now we got it all up and running. I'm going to get this posted as soon as possible. So the main thing to notice on these circles is that is the, how to say this. So essentially what we're doing when we graph it on a line is we're tracking either sine or cosine as it goes around this circle. Okay, I will post a really cool interactive video that lets you kind of trace it and shows how it works. But for now, we're just going to be plotting it. So the points to be aware of are, so we're starting with sine. Sine is our y value. So we're looking at the y value. So when it's at 0, my y value is 0. When it gets to 1, or sorry, pi over 2, my y value is 1. And then it's going to go this way. When it gets to pi, my y value is 0. When it gets down here to 3 pi over 2, my y value is going to be negative 1. And it's going to keep going. 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1, 0, negative 1. It's going to just go in that path the whole time. Okay? So they do add in one other one that we can track pretty easily, which is 1/2. And so if we remember when it'll hit that 1/2 height when it is at, I believe, cosine of pi over 6. It's this guy right here. So sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So it'll be 1/2, 1, 1/2, 0, negative 1/2, negative 1, negative 1/2, 0. But it's going to follow that pattern. Okay, so now we're going to go down here to this part, and we're going to fill in all these circles. And again, for these, you can either use this circle up here or your unit circle. So at 0, again, this is sine, so my sine value at 0 is just 0. And then I'm going to put a dot over here at 0. Pi over 6 is like right here. That's my 1/2 spot. So it's going to be at pi over 6, 1/2. And I'm going to put 1/2 here. Pi over 2 is the top of the circle, so that's going to be 1. So I'm going to put a dot at pi over 2 and 1. Okay, and then I'm going to keep going. And so now remember it's going to go down. It's going to go down to 1/2. At 5 pi over 6, it'll be back at 1/2. So I go over here, 5 pi over 6, put another dot at 1/2. And so it's got these pi over 3s on there. We don't use them at all for sine, but you'll use those for cosine, which you'll see on the next section. Okay, so then pi is right here. Pi is going to be 0. That's my y value. So now we're back at 0. And now it goes below the y-axis. So our first spot right here is going to be negative 1/2, which is our 7 pi over 6, negative 1/2. So that's going to go, where are we at? 7 pi over 6 is going to be right there. And then from there we go to here, which is negative 1, negative 1/2, and 0. Okay, I kind of sped up there just because I hope you're seeing the patterns. 3 pi over 2 is going to be here. So that's going to be negative 1. Then it's going to go back up to negative 1/2, and then it's going to go back up to 0. Okay, so there we've got all those dots. I'm going to zoom in real fast, or try to. I've got a textbook now, so it's a little weird. Let's autofocus that. There we go. So now you can see a better picture of that, and I'm going to connect the dots with a different line, and so you'll be able to see what the sine line looks like. It makes this wave function like that. All right, the important thing to remember is that if we go back to the circle, it would go 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And if we kept going, it's always going to repeat through those same numbers, which is what happens with this. This wave just keeps going on and on and on. So here's one of the important things to remember with sine and cosine. This length from 0 to 0, okay, how long that takes, that is known as the period. The period of a standard sine or cosine is 2 pi. Okay, that's how long it takes, right? Pi gets it to here, 2 pi gets it to there. And so it always is repeating, and there's lots of things that repeat that you'll be able to notice that we'll get into more. But for now, that's all it is, okay? This is the general sine function. So now I'm going to go to the next page. I'm going to zoom us back out a little. And we're going to go to the next page, and we're going to do the cosine function. Switch the boards. Close your eyes, because it's really confusing for a second. And then we go boop and turn that around. Autofocus. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do cosine. And it's the same deal. I don't have the circle, but now it's the, well, let's draw a circle because I think that helps. We have our circle. Now it's cosine, which is the x value, right? Sine is y, cosine is x. We're looking at cosine. So now, when we're looking at this point at 0, our x is actually 1. And then at pi over 3, right there, that's where it is 1/2. And then at pi over 2, that's where we get 0. So instead of being 0, 1, 0, -1, it's going to go 1, 0, -1, 0. Okay, so it's really just kind of turned a little. And so but it's all going to have those same numbers. They're just shifted a little bit. All right, so pi over 3 was this point right there. That's our 1/2. And then it gets to 0, and now we're already in -1/2. Then we get to -1. And then over here, we're still in -1/2. Right? And then we get to here, which is our 0 again. There's where we cross 0, so we go from here to here. That's our 0. Again, these are our 2 0 points. Then it's going to go here. Now we're on the positive side of the x-axis, so we're back to +1/2. And then we get back to +1. Okay, so there's the table. Now let's do the graph. So when our theta, or our x value, is 0, our output, or our cosine theta, is 1. So our first dot is up here. Okay, and then our next dot is at 1/2 at pi over 3. So it's going to go right there. Then we're going to hit our 0 at pi over 2. Then it goes down. 2 pi over 3 is -1/2. Okay, pi is at -1, so right there pi is going to hit -1. So looking at this, it almost looks like a straight line, but it's curving just a little bit. You'll see better once we finish it. Okay, so then 4 pi over 3, now it starts going back up. Now it's at 1/2. Then it's going to go 5 pi over 3, back up to 1/2. Oh, wait, what did I mess up? Oh, there we go, I was off by a section. So 3 pi over 2, it's back up at 0. 5 pi over 3, it's back to +1/2. And then at 2 pi, it's back up to 1. Okay, so there's our graph. It's not beautiful, but it works. Let's zoom in again so you can see better on that. Autofocus. And let's get a new color. Let's do orange. So I'm just going to connect all these lines so you can hopefully see the curve a little bit. Okay, so this is the cosine curve. One of the big things to note is it starts at 1, whereas sine starts at 0. You know what? I'm going to draw in light green just the sine wave over top of this so you can see how they compare. So that's there. It hits its highest point at pi over 2. Its lowest point is at 4 pi over 3. And then it's back to 0 here. Okay, so it goes like that. Okay, so you can see the cosine is really just the sine wave just shifted back by a little bit. And you can see how much it shifted back because right here is pi over 2. And that's kind of where it goes. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not where it shifts back. It shifts, oh no, that's right. So it shifts from pi over 2 here back to 0. So it's really just shifted over by pi over 2. Okay. Enough of that though, but another thing to notice, the period on this is exactly the same as it was. It goes from 0 to 2 pi. That's how long it takes to go from one spot where it starts to the same spot. That's the period, okay? The period is there, and so in this section we're going to be compressing and stretching, and so what we're going to be doing is compressing the amount of space it takes for it to repeat, or pulling it out and making it longer. Okay, we're going to be using that same formula we've used all year long, that, H, K, A, and B. But that's the basics of it, and hopefully that makes some sense. I'm going to stop this now, and then we'll get back to doing some more problems in a minute with some stretches and things. That's it. All right, thanks.